as clearly as possible, without any hyperbole or exaggeration. I love the fact that so many of the great commentators and influencers and those individuals who are watching the Tyler Robinson case with such an assiduous attention to detail, pointing out every discrepancy, everything that might be going wrong. I appreciate that. It is so terrific. And the escalating revelations about the case, including potential maybe mischarging and timeline discrepancies, all of this heighten the risk of him, and as far as our friend, Luna, being eliminated to bury a very messy cover-up with Lance and Tyler and the whole bit. I mean, she is in peril as well. From a web of documented facts, glaring inconsistencies, and the high-stakes political fallout from Charlie Kirk's dispatch. So what I'm going to be discussing very, very carefully with you is simply this. While I appreciate this, and I'm so glad somebody's doing this, remember, you might really be so effective in pointing out what a dog of a case this is, and how it is very likely that Tyler will walk, that you might, interestingly enough, you might be inadvertently involved in the architecture of his demise. The same thing for Lance. You hear what I'm saying? Let me explain. But first, this from our sponsor.
Last year, we talked about Alaska, a powerhouse of mineral wealth with a long track record of responsible development. Now it's back in focus with support from the Department of Defense and Department of Energy and the reopening of the Ambler Road project under President Trump. Momentum is building fast. Vizsla Copper, trading as VCUFF in the U.S. and VCU in Canada, has taken a major step forward. The company now owns 100% of the Palmer project, a high-grade asset believed to hold billions in in-ground value. It was even named by Alaska's governor in a memo to the White House as a priority for domestic critical minerals. And here is the headline. Washington just rolled out over $42 billion in support for critical minerals in early 2026 alone. We have seen this before. Similar backing sent other Alaska explorers up over 200%. Vizsla trades at a fraction of that value. Bottom line, America is rebuilding its mineral supply chain and domestic supply is winning. Big thanks to Vizsla Copper for making today's video possible.
Let me make sure I say this very carefully because it sounds a bit much. But you may be so effective. I mean, the work that's being done by so many folks, Candace and Barron, may be so terrific in pointing out all of the discrepancies and all of the problems that somebody somewhere might theoretically say, you know what? They make a good point. This isn't going as we had planned. So you know what? And don't think that can't happen. And if ever there was the need to really make sure these folks are watched carefully, I mean seriously, now is the time. I can't say this enough. Charlie Kirk's demise on the 10th of September of last year at Utah Valley University was so much was started. Tyler Robinson was the 22-year-old accused assailant. It seems like he was never supposed to survive long enough to force authorities into a full public review or reckoning. His decision to, turn himself in after the family intervention upended what appears in this particular framework to have been a very carefully scripted endgame. As more forensic holes and procedural irregularities and oddities and all of this emerge in early 2026 court filings, the pressure mounts. We're going to be talking about more messy investigations that could expose not just prosecutorial overreach, but deeper, systemic, organic, serious, critical parts of this routine, this thing, this event. You hear what I'm saying? It could be something that nobody ever even imagined. See, this is the part that's important. When you look at what happened, when you look at the most important issue of this, there was and was suggested that there were two different scenarios that were imagined, two different scenarios which are very, very critical, which is really the essence of this. The first is, number one, that there was a message, a link, something that, and by the way, these messages, all of these have to be authenticated. You see, I'm going to be jumping all over the place, so please forgive me. Just because somebody puts up a link, just because somebody says, look, here's a text, here's a written message, here's something. You just don't say, okay, it's in. It's like, no. It has to be authenticated. And in the world of evidence, that is critical. And it always starts off kind of the same. Before I show somebody something, even for identification, even have somebody comment. See, sometimes in trial work, when you know you can't get something in the evidence, you want the witness to talk about it, and then you don't introduce it. If you don't introduce it, it doesn't go in the jury room, and they don't get to review it, but they can hear it. So normally what you do is you have this document, whatever this is, this piece of paper, this text, this whatever. And you go to the witness and you say, I'm handing you what's been marked as state's exhibit or defense exhibit, whatever, number 1 for identification. What is this? And the looker says, oh, this was the letter, this was the note, this was the text message, this is whatever it was that I received that was under the keyboard or that Tyler left me. Is this a fair, true, and accurate depiction of what it pretends to be? Yes. But also, those are good. That's for like pictures and things like that. But when somebody shows you a document, you can say, is this what you found that day? Yes. How do you know? How do you know? See, that's another thing too. Sometimes somebody will hand you a paper and say, is this the document that was found? Yeah. How do you know? Did you put a mark on it? Remember the old days on Perry Mason? Was it Lieutenant Tragg said, it's got my mark on it. I got my mark on it. I know it's my mark. Is that Tyler's handwriting? I don't really know. Well, you better get somebody who knows his handwriting. You can have a graphologist. You can have somebody who can do forensic work. You just don't introduce, you don't talk about something just because it's there. You better tell me, what is this? What is it? Now, it's one thing when somebody says to you, this is what I found at home. Okay. It might not be Tyler's handwriting. It might not have been the way he writes. It might not have been, but I found it at home. This I found. I don't know what it is, but that's what I saw. Okay, great. Terrific. That's one thing. And by the way, sometimes as far as, handwriting, if you go back and look at it's very interesting, the Son of Sam case. In the Son of Sam case, if you ever remember reading the first letters, I think, that were sent to Jimmy Breslin, it had a very unique, very, very distinctive handwriting, graphic style. Later on, the style that was shown, or the actual note, was almost illegible. It was like written like by a 4-year-old with a broken hand. It was horrible. And how these two, I don't, to this day, how they didn't realize David Berkowitz, the guy you say is the son of Sam, the one who's in prison, did not write this thing that you said was written by the son of Sam. I don't get it. It's one of those things which, and by the way, the more you do this, like with anything else, you'll say, how is this possible? Okay. The problem gets when you're talking about text messages. Where did it come from? This is a text message from Tyler. How do you know? Well, it's from this number. This is where you've got to go into authentication. You've got to get somebody who says, yes, it came from that account to this. For all we know, let's be crazy. Let's be crazy. How do I know that this text message wasn't crafted by some CIA operative or somebody who works with Apple or some operative? How do I know any of this? I don't. Just because you tell me something is what it is doesn't mean it is what you say it is. I don't know. I don't understand where text messages and also Discord and that sort of thing. We'll get to that in a moment. So these are critical parts of this which have to be reviewed. But before we go into that, there were two separate timelines. One that was version 1 said basically, Tyler says, I'm going to turn myself in. I'm getting my family and blah, blah, blah. The other one, which seems like that's the one they were going to use, was I'm not going to spend the rest of my life languishing in some, I'm paraphrasing, languishing in some prison. They're going to have to take me out. That sounds like the S word by cop. You know, where people come on and say, come on, come and get me, and let the police do their magic. Let them take me out. I'm not going to be taken alive. Don't take me alive is a great Steely Dan song. It changed it. It seems like that's where they wanted to go. That was the script. That would have been perfect because historically all patsies, whether it's, remember Paddock in Las Vegas, the fellow in Butler, the Lee Harvey Oswald, they're always eliminated. This was different. He wasn't. Especially when he started announcing, by the way, I'm going to be turning myself in. What? We'll get to this later. Because the timelines are all wrong. But I want you to understand this, and I don't mean to get ahead of myself, but I'm going to do it. What you and I talk about, what you and I find interesting, what you and I consider to be interesting in terms of timelines and information has nothing to do necessarily with the trial. I can't opine that there might be some kind of an Intel MK Ultra plot to. No, I'm the defense lawyer theory, or I'm the prosecutor. And the prosecutor says, were you there? Did you take him out? And depending upon how this thing is written, how this actual charging document, if they ever go to full indictment or grand jury or whatever it is, you have to have some evidence that says how he did this. You don't charge somebody with, homicide, murder, one, or aggravated, and they say, hey, somehow you're responsible. Something. No, tell me how. So if you've got a problem with the rifle, and you do, because it is as linked to the offense as this lint brush, this is not conclusive either. This has nothing to do with anything that was fired or used that day. Neither does that rifle. With the scope, which when people see that, they may say, ooh and ah, and if you can't link them, that has to be suppressed. So I'm jumping ahead of the time, but remember, what we talk about in terms of this great deep dives and fantastic, I love it. That ain't going to come into court, though. Nobody will ever hear this. This will never see the light of day because it is beyond the realm of this, okay? They could have mischarged. They might have overcharged. Timeline discrepancies. All of this heightened the risk of Tyler and Luna being eliminated. attempted to bury a messy cover-up with the two. This is critical. And don't forget, this Lance there is in peril as well. Because theoretically, the witness tampering stuff may have been involved, him, her, it, they, and he. The first question you're going to ask him is, has anybody offered you immunity? Did they waive or offer to waive any prosecution? Because you're a person of interest. You might very well be, in this instance, think about this, you might very well be just this, I don't know what the word is. You might be this individual who could have been an accessory, might have been an accessory after the fact, harboring a fugitive. I mean, who knows? Tampering, dealing with. When you're telling somebody, here's what I'm going to do, I love you, I'm on my way, some prosecutors may say, a little goodbye is one thing, but you're talking a little bit too much. Listen, stranger things have happened. The point is, most rational people would say, I'm not going to testify to anything unless you grant me immunity. Unless you tell me that I'm not going to be, that this is really use immunity, that nothing that I say can be used against me. That what I'm testifying to, you can't turn around later on and say, aha, you said something, as long as it's not perjury. You see where this is going? It gets very complicated, very stacked up, and this Gordian knot starts to grow. And sometimes the people who are involved in this, because they want to move on, they don't want to go to trial with this. They just want him, the patsy, to be, that's the guy, now something happened to him and that's it, move along. And there's a lot of people right now, the DOJ and the FBI and a lot of others who are busy with a lot of stuff going on in the world, like wars and God knows what. And I'm not saying the feds are involved in this, but a lot of people figure we don't need any of this. These people are, I don't want to say the pun, overkill. This overkill. They don't believe this. They don't understand sometimes the necessity of this. And all of these glaring inconsistencies, these documented facts, and the high-stake political fallout from Charlie Kirk's dispatch on the 10th of September at Utah Valley University. From this 22-year-old kid, this accused shooter, he was never supposed to survive long enough to force the authorities into a full public reckoning, and that's the point. His decision to turn himself in after family intervention upended what appears in this particular framework to have been a carefully scripted endgame. As more forensic holes and procedures and all this stuff emerge in early 2026, the court filings and the like, the pressure mounts. You've got messy investigations. Messy investigations could expose not just prosecutorial overreach, but a deeper systemic failure, collapse, or worse. So let's look at this. Let's look at a breakdown of this. Let's expand the logic. Let's look at the evidence patterns. Let's look at the implications, okay? Let's see what we're talking about here. Starting with the core event, which is Tyler's unexpected survival. On September the 10th, Charlie Kirk, the conservative icon and Turning Point USA founder, was eliminated during an event at the UVU campus in Orem, Utah. Tyler Robinson, of course, the Washington County resident, was identified quickly, immediately via surveillance and witness accounts, which part of the yes, that's the guy. Okay. A rifle that was linked to him, his grandfather's per affidavit and evidence, was recovered nearby in woods, along with discarded clothing, and the dogs never found the rifle. And these dogs that could smell a fish fart, okay, they couldn't, probably because, wait for it, the rifle was never fired. Prosecutors charged him immediately, swiftly, with great celerity, with aggravated murder, with a victim targeting enhancement, felony discharge of a firearm. Talk about overkill. Yeah, we got that. Obstruction of justice, witness tampering with old Lance, and the case carried the possibility of the death penalty from the outset. So what stands out immediately is how Tyler's surrender altered everything. See, he was not captured in a dramatic standoff or a case where he was felled in a hail of bullets and police gunfire. No, nay, nay. Instead, his parents recognized him from FBI released images, and they confronted him. And with the help of a family friend and a local pastor, they convinced him to turn himself in. Remember that? Peacefully. Turn yourself in to the Washington County Sheriff's Office on September the 11th or 12th, accounts may vary. Now, the Washington County Sheriff, Nate Brooksby, described Robinson as cooperative, somber, quiet, and fearful of being eliminated by police if approached aggressively. That's why he turned himself in. That's why. Not to confess. And he sat silently with his parents before being transferred to Utah County Jail. And there was no by cop scenario. Gotta be careful here. Tyler had allegedly threatened, self-harm earlier when first confronted by family, but he chose to surrender over the escalation. Now, in the theory, this was never the plan. In theory, the expectation, whether from operational assumptions or by investigators or from whatever broader forces might have orchestrated or exploited the hit, the presumption was that Tyler would not see the light of day. He wouldn't live to see custody. A dead suspect ties off loose ends immediately. No trial, no cross-examination, no public airing of all this stuff, the motives and associations or evidence gaps. No. A quick resistance, a suicide narrative, writes the final chapter without embarrassing depositions or forensic deep dives. Turning himself in changed the timeline. It changed everything. And it forced authorities into a live, dependent, ongoing discovery, slow bleed of court filings. And by late 2025 and early 2026, Tyler was reportedly placed on suicide watch, a detail, by the way, echoed in multiple updates. That's important. Got to set the tone. If anything happens to him, we kind of warned you, because, he's kind of weird. And some may interpret this not as protective care, but maybe as a convenient setup for a future tragic outcome if pressure builds too much. So enter the text messages with Lance, Luna, Robinson's roommate, lover, romantic partner, described in the reports as a male transitioning to female. Okay, I never understood that. That's like me saying, I'm a male transitioning to an onion ring. Well, good for you. I have a better chance of becoming an onion ring as this guy with a woolly hat has a big woman. Anyway, so these messages, they were released by authorities in mid-September of last year, formed the emotional and evidentiary core of the prosecution's case. In them, Tyler allegedly confesses he planned the attack for about a week, acted because he'd had enough of Charlie's hatred and couldn't negotiate some hate. Couldn't negotiate some interesting phrase. He tells Twiggs how he turned himself in, adding a protective note. You are all I worry about, love, comma, love, indirect statements, comma. He's rather punctilious when it comes to grammar, isn't it? Yet on other occasions, he barely, there's an emoji and an abbreviation. And he instructs, by the way, I keep saying Luna, Lance, to delete the text. Stay silent, be quiet, lawyer up if questions. Now, prosecutors also are alleging that Tyler hid the rifle in clothes post-shooting and tried to get Twiggs to retrieve the gun from the scene, which is an act which a lot of folks are called rather suspiciously self-sabotaging. You love this person, be careful, lawyer up, don't say anything. But by the way, can you go get that rifle for me? It's nuts. Yet, these texts have fueled intense skepticism. Commentators on many, many platforms, not only X, but Reddit and others, and independent outlets have called them staged or not real, pointing to unnatural phrasings, shifts in vocabulary. For example, from the casual, grab the rifle early, and then he said retrieve, uses the word retrieve. And the oddly convenient timing of all this. Why would a calculated assassin, smart enough to plan for a week and flee the scene, immediately confessed in writing to the one person who could implicate him further? Why? And implicate the one you supposedly love. Why urge his partner into a crime scene crawling with cops? Now, theories, hypotheses range from planted evidence, imagine that, to coerced messaging or even AI-assisted fabrication, though, of course, it's not proven. Now, Lance cooperated initially with the FBI and was placed under FBI protection, a four-man detail that ended by January 2026. Why? Pay attention. Your protective detail has been disbanded, clearing the way for what? And by the way, he's since moved out of the state, I think reportedly to Texas with an attorney or something. You better be careful. And family members have described Twiggs' troubled past involving drugs and alcohol and gaming addiction and gender transition, lunacy, all this stuff. So in the cover-up lens, Twiggs isn't just a witness, he's a potential co-conspirator or loose end who knows too much about the real timeline. Now fast forward to the 2026 revelations, and that amplifies the danger. Court filings in late March 2026, as Robinson's defense prepared, for a May preliminary hearing, I guess, dropped bombshell after bombshell. ATF ballistics analysis could not conclusively match the bullet jacket fragment from Charlie's autopsy to the recovered rifle. Remember, same thing for this. The lint brush, was not linked in any way to it. Why? Because it wasn't involved in it. They make it sound like it wasn't linked, but trust me, it's still good. No. The report called the whole thing inconclusive. Not a positive ID, not a definitive exclusion, but far from the smoking gun match prosecutors need. And defense attorneys argued that this warrants delaying the hearing to review voluminous discovery, including potential expert testimony, which, by the way, the state just dumped every kind of discovery, police report, everything it knew. So here you go, sift through this, have a good day. So headlines exploded. One was, bullet used to kill Charlie Kirk did not match rifle allegedly used by suspect, Tyler Robinson. And then the experts that were brought in, they said, oh, no. That inclusive, that's not exoneration. But the seed was planted. Well, if it's not exoneration, well, what is it? Do you have another weapon? You're just going to say that there was by the way, you fired a rifle, which we don't have, which we can't bring up, which may have had your DNA on it because it was yours. It may have had 5 other people's. We're just going to just say it was a rifle, even though there's no fragment. There's nothing to show a bullet of any sort. Maybe plastic, maybe an exploding mic. I don't know. I don't want to get into that. But as we say in the South, that dog don't hunt. So DNA on the trigger and the cartridges were cited as consistent with Robinson, yet not ironclad. And you could say that again. Now, additional tests were ordered. Compounding, by the way, this are timeline anomalies. One circulating claim tied to court docs notes that Tyler was Mirandized at the station around 6:25 p.m. on the day of surrender. 6:25, Mirandized. He's there. He's in custody. He's being given Miranda. You have the right to remain silent. Miranda against Arizona. You know the case. Yet a Discord message, allegedly from him, around 7:57, discusses him turning himself in. What is this, time warp? Some kind of a parallel universe? He's here, then he goes to the future, goes back again? If he was already in custody and being Mirandized, how does that message originate? Was it pre-scheduled? Is it phony? Was it sent by someone else? Evidence of sloppy logging? Or evidence of a conspiracy to follow through with the timeline that somebody found out was changed but didn't know how to kill the progression? Everything was lined up to go, And they just said, well, let's go. And they said, no, we have to stop this now. Oops, too bad. Well, we have these different things in motion. So broader timeline questions, by the way, swirl around the shooting itself. Exact movements, missing campus footage gaps. How about photos from, did I hear correctly? Photos of Tyler at the police station? Some 30-day rule? I mean, just nuts. And by the way, you're not going to hear any of this on cable news because they're told to wrap this up. Move it along. Move it along. This Patsy, he's the only Patsy who was saved by the fact that he didn't know the script. And by the way, what about the speed of the evidence recovery? So the prosecutors are alleging, obstruction via hidden items and all that, but the defense is probing whether the full chain of custody holds up, and that's going to be important. Chain of custody plus authentication. So Tyler's first in-court appearance was in December of last year. Showed him in, civilian clothes, looking somber. Remote hearings earlier had fueled speculations about his condition. They showed this particular type of clothing for it. Right? And these cracks, the ballistic doubts, the procedural timing mismatches, all of this stuff. All of it suggests to theorists that Mr. Robinson, may have been mischarged at a minimum, that the case against him was rushed to political conclusion for optics, and that Charlie's death was a high-profile political dispatch amid tensions that were polarized. They blame, the lone wolf, radicalized leftist, with a transgender partner adding to the cultural layers. Oh, it's beautiful. And if in a narrative of unchecked, wild online hate or some ideological violence, but if the physical evidence doesn't align perfectly, and if there's a problem with exactly what the admission was it recorded? Is it your rendition? What if, remember, what if Lance takes a stand and says, I don't know what you're talking about. That never happened. And if Tyler takes a stand, and if he says, I never did that. Now, again, why he's there? Well, he's not charged with being there, being weird, wanting to be there, hating. That's not the charge. He's charged with doing it. If the timelines don't fit, you must acquit. And if they don't square, it opens doors to alternative explanations. Second shooters, real shooters, planted forensics, planted rifles, withheld evidence, and even deeper involvement by handlers. Investigations could get very messy and embarrassing for Utah authorities, the FBI, Kash Patel, federal agencies. Think discovery motions demanding full ATF reports. Wait, you have witnesses, people trying to recreate a shot that may not have ever taken place. Parent witness testimony, including that from Twiggs. Forensic reexaminations. A prolonged trial risks exposing confirmation bias in the initial rush to charge, or worse, coordinated efforts by someone or some group to close the case quietly. And here's where the elimination risk escalates. Per this theory, a living lawyered up Tyler Robinson in custody becomes a liability the deeper the holes go. Elimination doesn't require overt dispatch. It could manifest as a self-harm, a little ligature suspension. He's already on watch per reports. An accident during transport, health complications, something happens, he gets gets sick. All amplified by stress and the fact that history is littered with high-profile detainees who offed themselves or maybe OD'd, right as exculpatory evidence surfaced. Look at our friend, Jeff. Remember him? He being the cultural standard, the touchstone for this suspicion. Remember, they all looked at you straight in the eye and said, "Oh no, he did that himself." Remember, Barr did it, Kash Patel, Dan Bongina, they all did it. And with the death penalty on the table and public pressure to avenge Charlie, the incentive to neutralize Mr. Robinson quietly grows if he starts talking about foreknowledge or planted evidence or motives beyond the text. If he starts to look kind of like some big stupid kid. If people like him, if people say, wait a minute, this isn't what I imagined. That's why I think it's going to be critical for him to take the stand, because I think people should see his demeanor. His surrender already disrupted the clean kill script. Continued revelations could force a full reinvestigation, an embarrassing point for agencies that hype the confession, the text of the arrest. And Lance Twiggs also faces parallel peril. As the recipient of the alleged confession and the person allegedly tasked with evidence tampering, he's uniquely positioned to corroborate or contradict the official story. He was under FBI protection initially, suggesting that authorities at least viewed him as a target or something. But that shield dropped by January of this year. He's relocated, lawyered up, and largely silent publicly. If Tyler's defense calls him as a witness, as he will certainly be called, Lance could be compelled to testify about the text's authenticity, the relationship, the dynamics, or what Robinson really said and planned. Both men together could make the cover-up exposed. And Tyler, on the mechanics of the shooting and the custody timeline, Twiggs on the immediate aftermath of what really happened, the digital trail. In a scenario where the assassination served a larger interest, political destabilization, distraction, or even false flag elements, silencing the pair prevents the dominoes from falling. Twiggs better watch it. Watch it very carefully, because his transgender identity and personal struggles have already made him a lightning rod. Any random incident, an overdose, a relapse, accident, all of this could be dismissed as unrelated tragedy. Ultimately, though, this theory posits a high wire act for authorities. If you prosecute aggressively to close the Charlie Kirk case and signal, the toughness of political violence while managing leaks that could unravel the narrative, can they balance all this? Tyler Robinson's survival via surrender bought time, and they didn't think it was coming. But time is now working against the clean revolution. Each new filing, ballistics reports, discovery, all this stuff, all this scrutiny, all of it raises the stakes. If the case collapses or requires major revisions, it doesn't just free a defendant, it invites congressional probes, media reexamination, and a public distrust in institutions that already were strained by 2025's political climate, I guess. Elimination, which is what we're talking about, elimination becomes the low friction exit. No trial, no exposure, no narrative, nothing preserved via obituary. Of course, this remains speculative, of course, but official accounts insist the evidence, text, DNA, witness statements, overwhelms any forensic hiccups and inconclusive ballistics, which are common, they say, due to fragmentation, but I say not. See, prosecutors are maintaining that Tyler acted alone. He was radicalized, motivated by anti-Kirk rhetoric. No public evidence supports active elimination plots or anything like that. Yet the pattern fits a broader, kind of an archetypical framework here. Lone gunman cases that invite scrutiny precisely because perfection is impossible under the pressure. And as of April, as of now, with a preliminary hearing somewhere in the future, as it looms and as defense motions pile up and more evidence is revealed, and more of it is unfolding, whether it leads to acquittal, conviction, or something even darker, depends on how far the timeline deviations stretch and how committed the system is to containing them. Tyler and Lance hold pieces that could shatter the frame. Their continued existence forces the question: at what point does containment turn existential? This isn't me just waxing, crazy or conspiracy. This is the real McCoy, my friends. This is as real as it gets. Do me a great favor, I ask you, with all due respect, as is normally the case, please like this video. Please subscribe to the channel. Please hit that little bell so you're notified of live streams and new videos. And keep asking questions. Keep asking questions. Keep reviewing this. And understand the distinction between what we talk about on, on YouTube and the podcasting. Distinguish that to what happens in the trial. Either way, I reiterate, and I don't say this lightly. Tyler, Mr. Twiggs, you better be very careful.